Hey, honey,
Yes, Barry?
let's get out of here.
Where are we going?
Where do we always go?
Fascina y el viento, este ritmo de palmas, sin mi naturaleza, hasta encontrar la playa. Por eso grito al mundo, yo soy de Puerto Vallarta. Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta.
Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. I'm your host, Barry Kessler, and I'm just so happy to be introducing you to my favorite vacation destination. Hey, maybe it's even yours, and that is Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. That music you're listening to is performed by Alberto Perez, and Alberto is the owner of the Lapa Lapa group of restaurants. Those are the Lapa Lapa, Puerto Vallarta's oldest restaurant on the famous Los Muertos Beach, and the El Dorado Restaurant and Beach Club right next door. So you can enjoy that fantastic view of the Los Muertos Pier, all lit up at night in beautiful colors, or during the day in its grand splendor for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, seated with your toes in the sand right at the water's edge. It's so romantic. It's so Puerto Vallarta, my friends. This week we are going to hear from listener Hitesh Patel. And Hitesh chose to do the Airbnb Live Like a Local experience over the all-inclusive resort experience that, some families with young children go through when they visit paradise. And I will be talking about my tips and tricks for landing a good Airbnb. But before we get to that, let's see what's happening this week in Puerto Vallarta, May 2nd, 2019. The Fiestas de Mayo at the Parroquia de la Santa Cruz, the church over on Aguacate and Carranza. They are having their big Fiesta de Mayo. And let's see, that church is in the Emiliano Zapata neighborhood. It's very close to our friends over at Marisco Cisneros. And they had, a couple of weeks ago, they had a fundraiser we talked about over in Lazaro Cardenas Park to raise funds for this carnival, for this festival, and to also repair the street in front of the church. And so this is that festival. They have a big stage set up in the street, and they have live music playing all day long. Some great, great bands. They have tables set out with food, with sweets, with cakes. They've got food booths, of course. They've got carnival-style games. They have big bouncy things. It's a carnival. It's real Mexico. It's old-fashioned fun. So, get on down there to Aguacate and Carranza. You don't want to miss the good time if you're in town. It is the Fiesta de Mayo. It is at the Parroquia de Santa Cruz through tomorrow, May 3rd. You don't want to miss it. There's dancing in the street, folks. All right. I am on my way to Puerto Vallarta in a week and a half, and I made my appointment for a tooth cleaning. I'm doing my 6-month cleaning. I have a friend, our friend of the show, buddy of yours and mine, Barbara Ann Renee. She recommended this particular dentist to me, and she's a real dentist. She works out of an office in the Zona Romantica, and I'll have to get her card. I'll put it in the show notes so you can see where she is. But she works with her dad in an office there, and they're both dentists, and they both clean teeth all day long. And guess how much? Wait for it, folks. 300 pesos. 300 pesos. That's like an hour with a doctor, not a dental hygienist, a doctor, for $17 US. Now, I got to tell you that if you have sensitive teeth, you might not like her. She relies pretty heavily on her ultrasonic tool that she uses to break away the whatever's on your teeth. If you're eating breakfast, I'm sorry, you guys. And anyway, when she's done, she bags on me about how I need to floss more often and how I need to brush behind my teeth after I drink coffee and how I need to, take some time off and relax because you're grinding your teeth and you're going to bust them off. Yeah, she does it all in Spanish. It's great. It's great. Just like my other dentist, except for my other dentist, he does it in English, but I never see him anymore because I see this one for $17. Sorry, Dr. Chang. My wife thinks that I need to have my ears cleaned while I'm down there too, but after 30 years of marriage, I'm guessing that she just doesn't know the difference between selective hearing and deafness. You know what I mean? So it's sad, really. Restaurant Week is coming up May the 15th through June the 10th are the dates. And obviously it's longer than a week, but I'll be talking about that next week as we get closer to the date. Just remember, if you're going to be in town, May the 15th through June the 10th, you're going to be able to enjoy some of the great benefits of Restaurant Week. And again, we'll talk about that next week. The Festival of Folklore Vallarta Azteca International is taking place right now. Hey, you thought that, the high season was over. Well, things are just getting started here. It's just busy, busy, busy. I will read from their Facebook page. It says a great celebration of color, music, and tradition will be lived for 13 years in a row. Sorry about that. This is all translated. In Puerto Vallarta and the region, thanks to the work of the folkloric group Vallarta Azteca of Jalisco, the Trust of PV, the City Council of PV through the Directorate of Tourism, who have given themselves the arduous task of organizing this great event in which more than 750 guests from 7 states of the Republic will be received, such as Aguascalientes, Chiapas, Durango, Nayarit, Nuevo León, Sonora, Zacatecas, and representatives of 5 countries in Italy, Panama, Colombia, Ecuador, and Chile, who will give us a sample of folklore with their dances and music from their places of origin. The Festival of Folklore Vallarta Azteca International is going on right now through the 5th of May. You'll find it in front of the stadium near the Sheraton Hotel. I'll have a map that will get you right there. One of our favorite orphanages, Rise, is looking for volunteers to help at the orphanage, and I'm going to read right now from Lisa's Facebook post here. This is shared from our friend Lisa LaFontaine. Buenos dias todos, she says. I am the volunteer coordinator at Rise. Rise is a children's home in Colonia Benito Juarez, just past the small tunnel. We are looking for volunteers that live in Vallarta full-time that can jump in and help during the low season once all the snowbirds have gone home. We're looking for people to have playtime with nursery kids under 5 years old. We have 11:30 to 1 and 4 to 5:30 playtime. This is just free playtime. You don't need to know how to speak Spanish. Also, structured activities such as painting, puzzles, games, stories, music, arts and crafts, etc. are welcome during this time. Also, we have an English preschool program daily from 10 o'clock until 11:30. If you're interested in teaching or just assisting, let me know. We also need volunteers for the older kids. Their schedule is a little more flexible, but what they really need is some structured activities to help keep them busy. If you're willing to fall in love with the sweetest group of kids, then I encourage you to join our group and get started. Any amount of time would be appreciated. Gracias, Lisa LaFontaine. All right, so if you are full-time, you guys, any of you listening, maybe you might want to consider helping out. It doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it does sound like a lot of fun. So if you want to help out at the orphanage, I have links to get you there in the show notes, and you can contact them probably right through the Facebook page. And I have an interview planned with Rise this coming trip, and I'll have him on in a couple of weeks, and we will talk with some of the volunteers there about the cool stuff that is happening at Rise. And speaking of coming to town, that reminds me that I will be dropping in on JR's meet and greet over at Kelly's Por Favor Saloon and Cookhouse. It'll be 2 dates. It'll be two Tuesdays. The first one is Tuesday, May the 14th, and the second, May the 21st. Both will start at 6:30, and we're going to go till about 8, maybe 8:30, because I'd like to see that sunset. So let's see if we can see some of you come on over. We're going to set up on the rooftop, and just come on by and join us. If you don't want to talk, that's fine. If you want to talk, we have some of the greatest guests and listeners come and talk, and great interviews up on that roof over at Kelly's Por Favor Saloon and Cookhouse. So come on by and let's talk. I am going to be flying out Southwest Airlines, and that is my go-to airline out of LAX. And speaking of that airline, I want to give a shout-out to contributor and listener Adrian. Adrian works for my favorite airline, and he shot me a discount code as a gift. Saved me 20% off of my already low round-trip airfare from $235. I got it down to $188. Thank you, Adrian. That's round-trip out of LAX to Puerto Vallarta. Not bad. I love Southwest. The reason I love Southwest, it sounds like a commercial, but I'm totally serious, folks. You can check 2 bags. They're free. It means that I can bring down clothing to donate, and it doesn't cost me like $30 or $25 or whatever they charge now for extra bags. So I bring down used clothing and some toys, and I pack them all in an old suitcase, and I drop them off with Jorge over at Andales, or maybe I'll go with Jorge Zambrano and his merry band of helpers. We go off to feed the poor and hand out clothes, along with his helpers from Vallarta Sur Rotary Club. And of course, the other thing I like about Southwest is when you are driving into LAX, it's the first terminal, and so it's easy to be dropped off by the flyaway bus and picked up by the flyaway bus. So I know it sounds like a commercial, but I love Southwest Airlines. So I got the cheap flight for $188, and now we need to find an Airbnb. And so I found one, and we'll be talking about getting a good Airbnb in a few minutes here, but I found one for 9 of the 10 nights. It was only available at 9 out of 10, but it was $24 a night after cleaning fee and taxes. It all came to $32 a night, or $289 for 9 nights. And so you add that up with the $188 for the airfare, and it's not bad. $477 US. And what I still haven't decided, or I have no clue where I'm going to be staying the last night, but it'll be very easy that time of year to secure a place anywhere, really. Under the libramiento, that's a good spot. Someone's hammock, who knows? But anyway, like I said, you can pretty much find a good, inexpensive place if you're in Puerto Vallarta in the middle of May. So, not bad. Now, it doesn't include things like food. It doesn't include drink, transportation, gifts for the missus, weed, What? Oh, so yeah, even without that 20% discount, coming to Puerto Vallarta, I mean, is cheaper than staying at home. Crying out loud. So, come on down. Now, I got an email from my buddy, and he's a listener. His name is Dwight. Dwight actually has been on the show, both as a guest and as one of our email contributors. And I consider Dwight my friend. Anyway, I got this email. He asks about brunches in Puerto Vallarta. And since I know, Dwight, that you are coming to town soon, I thought that maybe next week I would dedicate a big part of the show to the best brunches in Puerto Vallarta. So if you are listening now and you have a favorite brunch, or it could be either a buffet-style brunch or a sit-down style lunch brunch, it doesn't matter. Let me know what your favorite one is and tell me why it is that you like it, and I'll add it to my list. And by the way, if you really hate one, it's okay to tell me about that too, right? We need to look out for one another. So if it's bad, we all want to know it's bad. So Dwight, hang in there. Next week we will talk about brunches. In fact, we're going to dedicate most of the show to the brunch. Long live the brunch. And the mimosa, right? And the mimosa. Okay, so for those of you who are listening to this podcast, you are technologically savvy people. You know how to use apps because you're probably listening to this podcast on an app. And so you would know how to use the Airbnb app. You can go online and sign up for Airbnb. It's pretty easy. They want to know things about you specifically, though. So be ready for prying. Because they want to know, make sure that, first of all, you can pay. And they want to make sure that when you show up at one of these Airbnbs, that you'll be a good citizen, if you know what I mean. So anyway, so the first thing you're going to need to do is, sign up for Airbnb. Now, what Airbnb does is it allows owners of properties to advertise them to the world as vacation rentals. And what it's done in Mexico, as well as in Puerto Vallarta, is it has enabled these Mexicans who have been very cash poor, for example, but happen to own property. It has given them an opportunity to make some money, to generate some income, and actually, create their own business. So currently, it has been reported that the number of Airbnbs on the Bahia de Banderas is equal to the number of hotel rooms and timeshare resorts, if you can imagine that. And then if that is true, that is an amazing statistic. So how do you know if you're getting a good place to stay, and what should you be looking for when you are doing the Airbnb thing? The first thing you got to do is you got to know what your budget is. Pick the highest price that you're willing to spend per night, but don't be afraid to look at the lower priced options as well. They might surprise you. So don't limit yourself on the low end. Limit yourself, of course, on the high end. And there are filters and there are ways so that you can do that. The next thing you want to do is you want to think about where you want to stay in town. And then use the map feature in the application to locate the approximate location of your Airbnb. Now, there are other filters as far as options for the kind of room that you're going to want to stay in. The options could be a hotel room, for example. I have noticed that you will find rooms from the Belmar Hotel in the Airbnb app. I've seen La Jolla del Tuito in the Airbnb app. I have seen a number of hotels like that. Then there are, so those places, you know where they are because they happen to be a hotel. So they have a location and they tell you what the location is. Then there's the hostels, right? For people who are really traveling cheap, who don't mind maybe sharing a room or, sharing living space. Then there are a number of those, and there are filters for those too. So if you want to filter those in, you can. If you want to filter them out, that's fine too. And then there are filters for if you want to rent a room in somebody's home. So they have a little private room inside of a home where you share the bathroom and maybe the kitchen area and maybe even the area like, I don't know, a balcony or a rooftop or something like that. So there is that. And then there is the entire home. And that could be an apartment building, an apartment or a house, right? When they talk about the entire home. So those filters are handy as well. Now, when I'm looking, I am not there to share a hostel. I am not there to share a room with anybody. And I'm usually not looking for a hotel room. I'm looking for a place that has a desk where I can work. I'm looking for a place that has a kitchen in case I want to prepare a meal, although I never prepare a meal when I go to Puerto Vallarta. All right? Never. Okay. But if I wanted to, you would get one with a kitchen. Many of these places that are, entire home or whatever it is, they have kitchen facilities in them. And I'm also looking for a place that has good internet. I'm looking for a place that has a comfortable bed, and I'm looking for a place that's not noisy. Or these are the things that we all look for. We're all a little bit different, but this is what I'm looking for and I'm looking for a place that's centrally located, so that I can get around town. And because I'm doing interviews all day, and I just want to be able to hop on a bus, or grab a taxi and go. So that is what I'm doing. And so when you are looking for your Airbnb, you need to be specific. Do you want to be on the beach, right? Do you want to have an ocean view? Do you want to be right on the water? Do you want to be up in the jungle? I mean, and you get choices like that. Now, Airbnb does not give you an address of the property. They show you a map of the vicinity of where this particular room or Airbnb happens to be. Now, if you're familiar with the city, sometimes you can actually tell where you are just by looking out, by looking at one of the pictures and looking out one of the windows in the pictures. Blow it up, expand it, and see if you recognize the area. Now, sometimes if you read the reviews from previous guests, and sometimes there are numerous ones, so you want to flip through them. And sometimes they'll slip up and they'll tell you what the street name is, and so that is helpful. Sometimes when you're on the site, it's in the description of the host. So anyway, when you are on that site, make sure that you look at the map view of all the properties. And that map view is going to give you a really good idea of where this particular Airbnb is located. It just seems that is more accurate. Now, I've gotten really good at the technique of looking at outside pictures and then triangulating with the help of like Google Earth and Google Maps. And the last 3 Airbnbs, I was able to look at pictures of like looking out the window, looking off the roof, looking off a patio or something like that, picture of looking down the street and being able to recognize things so that I can do this triangulation. And in the last 3, I knew the address before I pushed the button. So, if you know the town well enough, you can pretty much, through this method, figure out where this Airbnb is. Now, remember that Puerto Vallarta is hilly and it has lots of steps. So you need to know your physical limitations, right? So many of these listings will tell you in advance. They will say, there are many steps, or there are a few, or it's up a steep hill, right? So know what you are in for, right? And these reviews that I'm talking about, the reviews are going to be the best gauge for the difficulty of your climb. That's for sure. If the place is on a steep hill, the question is: are you going to walk up that steep hill, or are you going to hire a cab or an Uber to take you up the hill every time? And how many 50 peso trips are you going to take every day up this steep hill? You got to keep that in mind. I have stayed in numerous Airbnbs where there have been lots of hills and lots of stairs to climb. But I knew it in advance, and I'm just I'm a glutton for punishment, and I love a good view. So I don't care if I have to, do a couple extra steps. Although I had one when I went to go watch the Down Vallarta, and I had to. The walk was all the way up to Emiliano Carranza, and then from there I had to walk up a steep alleyway, which is a street called Calle Peligroso, and then once I got to the gate, I had a 50 steps up to my room. So that was tough. That was tough. Anyhow, know your limitations, okay? Now, use the ratings and reviews and just read them carefully. Here's the deal. Travelers, they oftentimes they'll build a relationship with their hosts. A lot of these Airbnb hosts are owners. They're not managers. They don't have a manager coming over to help you. They're actually the home owner. And so you like them, but what if you got to say something bad about their place? Sometimes you can be a little shy, so you have to you have to look at the way that people talk or write, I should say, about their experiences. So if they say, for example, if they say it was a little noisy at night, what they really mean is that it was really noisy, and it was really noisy all night, okay? Because otherwise, why would they mention it, right? I mean, it's just, let's be real here. So they're giving you a hint, okay? They're giving you a tell. And, for example, if there's lots of reports on the same issue, like a dog barking or roosters crowing or whatever it is, then you know that you have the goods on that particular issue in that particular place. Now, if one of the reviews says that the internet was slow, for example, then you can pretty much count on that internet being pretty lousy the entire trip, right? Because, once again, that person writing that review might not want to make life harder for this poor Airbnb host, right? So if they mention things like the hot water, or they mention the cleanliness, or they mention the security, or, whatever, don't take them as little hints with a grain of salt. Magnify them. Understand the underlying sentiment that these kind people are leaving, okay? Read them carefully, read between the lines, and if they have a rating of less than 4.5 stars, move on. Don't bother, okay? There are plenty of places that have 4.5 and above stars, and go with those. Now, if they have no ratings at all, let's say they're too new, they actually they'll mark it. They'll say new. It'll say it right on the listing itself. And you're just taking a chance, because you got to look at the pictures. You got to hope that the pictures are accurate, and you have to, just cross your fingers and go for it. Now, I've done it a couple times, and I've been very, very happy both times. But both times, I was able to look at the pictures of the place, look out the door of the place, or look down the street and know where it was. And then I knew for sure it was a good deal, and, I went for it. So Don't be afraid if you know where the place is by looking at it. Go for it, even if it's brand new and has no reviews. Okay. Does the place have an air conditioner, right? Now, if you're staying in Puerto Vallarta during the high season, like between January and March, even April, you probably won't need an air conditioner. I mean, I know I don't. A fan, fan's just fine for me. And places without air conditioning are generally cheaper. In fact, some places will charge you an extra surcharge on top of a posted rate for electricity if they happen to have one or two air conditioners in the unit, because they hate to have people hogging the air conditioners. Electricity is very expensive in Mexico. So what they'll do is they'll take a reading of your meter and then they'll charge you extra above like a certain agreed upon amount of usage. And in the case where I rented one of these Airbnbs in a V177 building in the romantic zone, the extra cost, although I was a little worried at the time, was just like, I think it was less than $10. So there are occasions when there's a surcharge for electricity. So look for that. So remember, in Paradise, air conditioning, fans, they are a must. Now, we're all different. Some of you need air conditioning in Puerto Vallarta, at every time of the year. Who knows? Maybe it's because of the humidity or whatever it is. It's just the way you are. You know best about you. And if you're one of those people, or if you're traveling with one of those people, get air conditioning, okay? Now, if you need good internet, and many people do, then you need to be very aware. Now, again, in the listing, it'll tell you, we have internet. So read the reviews and see what they say about the internet strength. Now, if you really depend on your service, you can actually ask the host a question before you book your Airbnb. So you can send them a message, and then you can, then if they say, yeah, it's fine, then you might be good to go. But sometimes it's not fine. And when it's not fine, a lot of times you need to have, a second plan or a third plan, right? So make sure that you've got a good data plan on your phone. If you've got a mobile hotspot, make sure you bring it along with you. And if you don't know how to do that, if you don't know how to make your phone into a mobile hotspot, then, take care of that before you go. Have somebody help you do it. And then, worst thing comes to worse, go to a Starbucks or, go to our favorite place, Vallarta Cowork, if you need to get some work done. Now, Airbnb does have a process if you have a horrible listing. If you've come across one that's just wrong and you can't stay and you have to move on, you can read that, and I'll have that information in the show notes. Now, personally, I've got to say that I have never had a bad experience doing the Airbnb in Puerto Vallarta. And I've done a lot of them, so I have actually embedded a number of videos that I've taken of places that I've stayed in Airbnbs in Puerto Vallarta, and they're going to be in the show notes for this episode. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about landing a great Airbnb stay when you are in Puerto Vallarta. And all this talk brings us to our guest. His name is Hitesh Patel. And Hitesh wrote an email, which I read a couple weeks back, about his listening to the show. And after listening to the show and doing a little talking with his wife, he decided to bypass that all-inclusive resort thing in favor of a more local experience of renting an Airbnb in town. And he made that decision after listening to the podcast. So he has a couple young kids. He and his wife and family had a wonderful time, he says. And he offered to come on the show and share his experiences and give us some tips for traveling with young kids and infants. And so, I'm all, yeah, bring it on. So I sent him a microphone. And so we had a conversation via Skype call. So let's go right now to Tigard, Oregon, and let me introduce you to Hitesh Patel, who will tell us his experience with Puerto Vallarta, Airbnbs, and young children in paradise. Hi, Hitesh. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your family, where you're from, and how did you decide to vacation in Puerto Vallarta with your kids?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Portland, Oregon. I was born and raised here. Been here all my life. My wife and I like to travel. We travel quite a bit, actually, because her family's spread out all over the U.S. And so her and my kids fly quite a bit, and she's pretty good at looking for deals. And so she came across some pretty inexpensive tickets to Puerto Vallarta. There's direct flights now from Portland, and we have the Alaska card, so we had a companion fare as well, and it was, I think, probably around $650 or $700 for all four of us to get to Puerto Vallarta and back. One of them's a lap child, so we didn't have to pay for my youngest's ticket. But yeah, it was a pretty inexpensive deal. I've been there once before, on a cruise though.
Yeah.
And so, when you're on a cruise, those are fun, but you don't get to experience the culture and all of that stuff. And so I wanted to come back because, when I stopped there, it looked like an amazing town. We stopped at some restaurants, the food was great. And so I've been wanting to go back. That was about 10 years ago. And so that's how we booked our ticket.
Excellent. All right. So you sent me an email, and I read it a couple weeks back. And for those of you who hadn't heard it, maybe you could remind them as to what you wrote about.
Yeah. So what I wrote about was some of the concerns I had about going to Puerto Vallarta. I'm a pretty adventurous traveler myself, and my wife's usually pretty okay with it as long as she's with me. But we got two kids now, and so I have a 3-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter. Actually, just short of 1 when we went in December. And you're always a little bit more timid about traveling, especially in a foreign country when you have kids. And so we were kind of clamming up about what we wanted to do over there. I'm usually pretty adventurous. I wanted to go check out the neighborhoods, but you got little kids, and you got to be a little bit more careful. And so I told my parents and my brothers that, hey, we're going to Mexico, and they said, well, with the kids? And, I was like, yeah. And so they were like, well, you got to be careful. In the news, there were news articles about, families that got killed over there, and, muggings and things like that. And so they were like, you need to be careful. So I went on to the U.S. Department of State website. I don't know if you've taken a look at that recently, but if you go there, it says that it's for that particular state, it says it's a level 3, and it says reconsider travel due to crime. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of a little bit of a shocker when you're about to go there with your 3-year-old and your 1-year-old, right?
Right.
And so what I did is I started doing research. And so that's when I came across your podcast and started listening to it. Before I came across your podcast, we were very seriously contemplating just staying at a resort because, we knew that would be kind of a safer option. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yeah, luckily I came across your podcast, and I started listening to that, and got a lot more comfortable about the area and learning about the neighborhoods and how friendly everyone was. And so we decided to go ahead and take the gamble and just go ahead and stay at an Airbnb in Old Town.
Okay, so you had been there before on the cruise about 10 years earlier. So how did you go about picking the Airbnb?
So, what I did was I started listening to your podcast and thinking about what kind of things I wanted to do, what kind of restaurants I wanted to go to. I'm a real big foodie, so a lot of my trip was planned around trying food. And so I kind of just mapped that out on Google and went on to Airbnb and started looking for places that were close to those activities and restaurants.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit about the place.
Yeah, so it was pretty great. It was right along the River Quale. So from the balcony there, you could actually see out onto the river, which was great. It's that street that's it's about 10 blocks back from the ocean. And so it's an unfinished street. But it was very, local, and you really got the culture there because There was always kids playing outside. So that was kind of neat. And it's a narrow house, right? It's 4 stories tall, but extremely narrow. And I get the feeling that that's how a lot of houses are there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really interesting. So there was a lot of stairs. So that was one thing we had to be very careful about with little kids, because there's a lot of concrete stairs in the house. But we kept our eyes on the kids, and we managed to be okay. There was a little what they advertised as a pool on the roof, which was really more of a small hot tub.
Right.
But it was great for just
a plunging pool, they call them.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, the Airbnb was fantastic. We actually it was the 4 of us, my wife and my 2 kids, and then we actually snaked along my wife's 2 brothers and another friend. So we had 7 people in total.
Oh,
and
wow.
so for the 7 of us, I think it was probably $250 a person for 5 or 6 nights.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is great. So that was it was a house. So
It was a house.
It's funny because these houses in Vallarta, they always build them up. They go straight up, and they always leave rebar so they can build another floor. So this was a tall one. All right. Roosters? Did you have roosters back there?
We did have roosters there in the morning, and I thought that was actually pretty neat to hear that. One of the things that was actually very alarming for us, and it took us a couple days to get used to, was fireworks.
Oh, yeah.
And so the fireworks are very loud, and they're not like the fireworks we have here in the U.S. They sound like bombs if you don't know what they are. And they'll happen in the morning, they'll happen in the evening, and I don't know exactly what the events are that
It was probably the time of year. Yeah, you were in December, so they were probably celebrating like Virgin of Guadalupe or something like that happening down that time. And they shoot these. They shoot these. They call them Jesus bombs or something like that. Just huge, big explosions.
Right. Yeah, and so they'll shake the windows in the house, and so they it's a little shocking at first.
Scare your kids.
Yeah, it scares the kids. But they got used to it pretty quickly.
Yeah, who doesn't like it? The dogs. The dogs hate it. They bark for hours afterwards.
Right.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit about that neighborhood and that area there. What kind of food was there?
Yeah, so the food was amazing. We mapped out everything that you talked about on your podcast, and the great thing is we just walked everywhere. We never, we took an Uber from the airport to the house, and then after that, we never used another car again.
Wow. Yeah.
We just walked everywhere, and like I said, our street was unfinished, and then as you get closer to the ocean, there's a little bit more cobblestone and things like that, which is important if you have a kid in a stroller.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I guess is really important about bringing a kid there. We used a stroller called a bob, and if you're a parent, you probably know what that is. It's one pretty common stroller nowadays with the much larger wheels. It's kind of made for running. Mm-hmm. And that was really essential over there, because if you got small stroller tires in Puerto Vallarta, you're going to have a hard time with all the cobblestone and all the rocks and everything. So definitely bring a stroller with large tires if you're going to do that. And it worked out well for us.
No doubt.
Yeah, so we walked everywhere, and we really enjoyed the food there. My kids are big into breakfast, and especially my son. So, the Freddy's Toucan and the Pancake House were some of our favorites in the morning.
Yeah, great places.
And we were a little bit worried about bringing kids to some of the restaurants there, and we were worried about if they would have high chairs and things like that. But they, 90% of them did. They were pretty accommodating for kids.
Yeah, well, very, very kid-friendly in Mexico, and that's the one thing. When we started going there, we had, well, I should say, after we had our kids, when we went there, we were very, very surprised at how accommodating everybody was. And you're right, and, high chairs, they take the kids away from us and let us eat. It was pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was great. One of the days, my wife and her brothers went off and did some touristy things, and zip lining or something like that. And so I was alone with my two kids, and I decided to go over to the Salty Caesar for breakfast, which is not a place that you would expect to be, to bring kids to, really. But it was empty, so I stopped in there, and we had really great chilaquiles. Is that what it's called?
Chilaquiles, yes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and they were super friendly with the kids. They put on cartoons for the kids, and they were playing and making noises to entertain the kids. So I thought that was really really great.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. So you went to a couple different restaurants. You got any that were your favorites? You got, I guess you were talking about Freddy's and the Pancake House for breakfast.
Yeah.
Did you find some that you went back to a couple times because you liked it so much?
I'm a big beer drinker, and so I did really enjoy going to Los Muertos Brewing, and you can't beat that lunch deal with the 75 pesos for the pizza and the fries and the beer. So yeah, that was great. We went to a pretty nice place I think it was called No Way Jose. That was great too. We had a good meal there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just we tried a lot of the food carts and street food. That was just amazing. There was I don't know if you talked about this on your podcast or not, but there's on the same street as Salty Caesar, there's like an alleyway with 3 or 4 food trucks in there. Have you been there?
I have been there actually. So yes, you went there.
I did go there, yeah. And I think there's 3 food trucks in there, and there's also a bar. And so you can have a drink, and you can try a couple different types of food. I think there was like a more traditional Mexican one, and maybe like a seafood place, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Barrio Vallarta, and they have the fish stand, and they have the taco truck and the burger truck. So they got like the three different trucks inside.
Yeah. I'm from Portland, and so if you've been to Portland, we're really big on the food carts here. So that was kind of a cool thing to see there. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, he's done a good job in there. The atmosphere that he set up in there, he made it so that it looks like you're in an alleyway. It's really with the amount of work that he put into that place is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we also tried a lot of the kind of smaller, lesser-known restaurants just back in the neighborhood. I don't remember the names of all of them, but one of the things that surprised me the most was just how inexpensive all the food is there. It's just, for 10 or 20 bucks American, I can feed my entire family, and really great food too.
Yeah, and not be afraid.
Right,
not be afraid to eat the food.
Exactly.
Did you take any excursions with your kids?
I didn't take any excursions with my kids. My wife went on one with her brothers, and they did enjoy that. But we just spent a lot of time out on the beach, hanging out there. There's a whole bunch of these, bars and things like that line the beach, and you can just sit there and have a drink and have your toes in the sand, and your kids can play right there in the sand. And so my son could sit there and play in the sand all day long. So we did a lot of relaxing out there.
Excellent. So you got around by foot. You didn't really take any Ubers or hop in too many taxis. Did you get any bus rides in, or you just basically hoofing it?
No, yeah, we were just hoofing it around town, which was great. We all enjoy walking, so it was good to burn off all the calories from all the food we were eating.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So and the beer. Don't forget the beer over at Los Muertos, and that is a great deal, by the way.
Yeah, right.
What surprised you the most about Puerto Vallarta?
Just how friendly everyone was. I think that was the big one. And the second thing is I was expecting it to be a lot more crowded and busy down there. So I was there the very beginning of December. So I think I was there from November 30th to a few days into December. And it really wasn't that busy. It was perfect. It was just enough people to make it feel like it was a good experience and not overly crowded.
Right. Any disappointments?
One of the disappointments I had was I didn't spend more time in downtown, across the bridge. all the places I had plotted out were really in Old Town, and so I stayed there, and that's where I chose to find a place to stay. And we walked around there. On the last night, we crossed the bridge and went into downtown, and it's like a completely different city almost. It's a lot more commercialized, and I think we would have enjoyed walking around there and trying some of the things on that side of town, and we just didn't do that until the last night.
Well, the next time, that's what you're going to do.
That's right. Yeah, maybe every time we can check out a different part of town.
Yeah, that's the great thing about doing the Airbnb thing is that you can, check out different parts of town. Sometimes if I'm staying there a long time, I split it up so I can go and check different Airbnbs out and different neighborhoods out too. So
Right.
Yeah, what a great experience with you and your kids. How about your kids? How did your kids like it?
They really enjoyed it. They had a good time. My son loved it. He just loved going up and down all the stairs in the house. And there was a patio, so he could overlook the patio and watch all the kids playing in the river. And we went out there and let him play too. And yeah, they did really good. My daughters, she did great too. We bought these little mosquito bracelets on Amazon that seemed to work really amazing. We just tied them on to the kids, and they never had any problems with the bugs.
Wait a minute, hold it. Wait a minute. What? A mosquito bracelet? Really? No, so you're not like spraying bug repellent on, you're wearing a bracelet?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just go onto Amazon. There are these little bracelets that kind of smell like those citronella candles.
Okay.
And so I tied one onto the foot of my daughter, and tied one onto the hand of my son, and they worked surprisingly well.
Wow. I've never heard of that. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. So, all right. So, what would you say, traveling with kids? Have you got any advice for people traveling with kids?
Yeah. So, well, one of the biggest and most frustrating things about traveling with kids is probably the flight. And so we've flown quite a bit with our kids. And so we figured out a system where we time our flights for around their nap time, and we make sure they don't nap before the flight. And that seems to work pretty well for us. And being down there in Mexico, we when you go into a different country with your kids, you tend to overpack everything, diapers and baby food and all sorts of stuff. But really, it's very available down there in Mexico. They have those, I think they're called Oxxos, the little stores around every corner.
Yeah.
And they have everything you need there. They got the diapers, they got the baby food, and I think it was like 6 pesos or 8 pesos for baby food, which is, I don't know, not even 50 cents. And so it's just, you run out of baby food and it's right there around the corner. So everything you need's there.
So don't overpack. Don't worry about it. The diapers, the baby food, it's there. The formula, they've got it, right? And
Yeah.
If you can't get it at OXXO, you can get it at Walmart. You can get it at Lay supermarket. There's all kinds of ways to do that. So, did you do any strolling on the Malecon? Did you get out there at night and do any of that?
Yeah, I did do that. That was great. The Malecon's a good place. There's like a giant night market that goes on right off the Malecon there, which was a cool place to walk around and get some treats. My wife really likes that Mexican corn. I think it's called elote.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we went down there and had some of that and just kind of walked around. It was a cool area.
Excellent. Do anybody in your family have any? Doesn't sound like anybody had any dietary restrictions. Everybody's eating everything, so that's good.
Well, my wife is a vegetarian.
Okay.
So I'm a meat eater.
So therefore the elote and.
Yeah, so I'm a meat eater. She's a vegetarian. But we didn't have any problems with her finding food down there. There was always something there. And I know you had talked about a couple of different vegetarian places on your podcast at one point.
Yeah.
And we didn't even go to any of those because most of the places we went to had options available. So that was cool. One more thing we did was our Airbnb host was kind of like a super host. He offered all these different options, and one of the things he offered is to have a local come and cook in our house.
Oh.
So we took him up on that offer. It was pretty inexpensive. You paid $10 a plate, and plus the cost of groceries. And we had 2 chefs come into our house and cook food for us, and it was pretty amazing. They catered to whatever food we wanted, and it was great.
So
it was a good experience.
Did they teach you? They actually came into the house and cooked and prepared the meal?
Yeah, they prepared the meal. They didn't teach us how to do it.
Okay.
But yeah, they made some, I want to say they were like mole ribs.
Okay.
And then they prepared a vegetarian option for my wife, which was like a cheese stuffed pepper or something like that.
Okay. Wow. All right. And that meal, how would you compare that meal with the other meals that you had around town?
It was different, it was a little more authentic feeling. So it was a good experience to have.
All right. Would you recommend it?
Yeah, I think I would recommend it. Yeah, it's a different experience for sure, and you get to talk to the locals there, and they were really friendly. They held our kids while we were eating dinner, and it was a good experience.
Extra added bonus.
Right,
cook.
right.
All right, all right. Who had to do the
Yep.
dishes?
They did the dishes as well.
Okay,
Yeah, they
good.
cleaned
Yes.
everything up.
All right, good. All
Yeah, they
right.
packed everything up and put all the extras in the fridge for us, and yeah, it was great.
What a good idea, you guys. Okay, cool. I like that. All right. Well, why not? Why not? If you can't leave, and if you got kids, sometimes you don't have the opportunity to get out at night.
Right.
So why not? Why not have someone come and do that for you? What a great
Yep.
idea. Am I missing something? Is there something else?
No, not that I can think of. Actually, one of the things I was also surprised about was, I've traveled a lot to a number of different countries, and usually the beggars and the the pushy sales guys or vendors are usually a big problem. I didn't actually find that a very big problem down there, especially when you're sitting down on the beach. You'll get a couple of those people that walk by, but you just say no and they walk away, which is different than a lot of countries that I visited. They're usually a lot more pushy. So I was kind of surprised by that.
Yeah, they're friendly. The vendors here are friendly, and yeah, some of them can be, but
Mhm.
some a little pushy. But when are you coming back? When are you going to come back to paradise?
I keep telling my wife we need to make this an annual event. So maybe this upcoming December we'll try it again. We'll see.
Yeah, okay. Well, see how many years your wife puts up with that. My wife has already given up on me, right? She says, just go. She says, go. So, all right, all right. Don't you want to come with me? I got the Airbnb. I can get one with a bigger bed. No, go. Okay, all right, all right.
That's funny.
Yeah, well, all right. Well, hey, thanks for the email. Thanks for helping the listeners who have kids feel better about bringing their kids to Mexico, to Puerto Vallarta, I should say, and for all the great tips. I really appreciate that, Tesh.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Hopefully I'll see you there one time.
Hey, I would love to do that. Thanks very much.
All right. Thanks, Barry.
All right. Thanks, Hitesh. So Hitesh, he used many of the services that are offered on the Airbnb application. As I've said, and we've talked about this before, and as Hitesh said, they offer tours, they have cooks that come on board, and so on, and things that will make your vacation simple and easy. It's kind of a one-stop shop, and I have pictures of Hitesh and his family, and I have a link to the Airbnb unit that they happen to stay in, and his review is a long one, and it's right there with that. You can kind of read his review and get an idea of what we're talking about. He talks about all the things that he did using the Airbnb platform, and he did a lot. So go over there and read that. It's very interesting. Now, with all that in mind, you know how I feel about Airbnb getting into the tour business. I don't like it. I prefer that if you need a tour, that you go see JR. You go see my buddy JR over at vallartainfo.com, and that is what I would prefer that you do, of course. But of course, you know that, don't you? Yes, you do. I'll answer that for you right now. Anyway, thank you, Hitesh. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with us. And that should actually do it for this week. Next week, stay tuned for more on-the-ground reports from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, with travel tips, great restaurant excursion ideas, and brunches, and more. But until then, remember, this is an interactive show where I depend on your questions and your suggestions about all things Puerto Vallarta. If you think of something that I should be talking about, then please reach out to me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending us your message. And remember, if you're considering booking any type of tour while you're in Puerto Vallarta, you must go to vallartainfo.com, not Airbnb, and check out JR's website. reserve your tour through him right from his website. And remember, it's a value for value proposition, my friends. His experience and on-the-ground knowledge of everything Puerto Vallarta in exchange for your making a purchase of a tour that you would do anyway. You're just doing it through him as a way of saying, thanks. Thanks, JR, for being our guide. It costs no more than if you were going to use someone else. So just do it, really. And when you do take one of those tours, email me about your experiences. Maybe you can come on board and share with others what you liked or didn't like about the tour. Again, contact me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending off a message. And don't forget, he's got his maps, his DIY tours, his revitalized happy hour board, and more. And I have links to all of those in the show notes. And if you like this podcast, take the time and subscribe and give me a good review if you will. That way we can get the word out to more and more people about the magic of this place, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And remember, I made it easy for you to do just that with each episode I create. But if you haven't been to my website, well, you really need to have a look there. I have links to the places we talk about, interesting pictures, and more right there in the show notes and in the blog posts for each episode of the show. Already, all right? All right. Well, thank you, Hitesh Patel. Thanks for coming on the show, telling us about your experiences with Airbnb, about your experience with traveling with your young kids. And, you know, I have links to the places that Hitesh talked about right there in my show notes, as well as all the great information regarding Airbnb. I want to thank all of you for listening all the way through this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. This is Barry Kessler, signing off with a wish for all of you to slow down, be kind, and live the Vallarta lifestyle. Nos vemos, amigos.
Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de amor junto al mar. Oh, oh, solo camino interno por la playa, me encuentro junto al río cuando todo está en calma. Pronto cae la noche, brillas Puerto Vallarta.